Good afternoon, Algebra 1 friends. We are here today with some more triangle proofs. And if you will turn to this page in your packet, I know we did 7 and 8 yesterday, talking about reflexive property. So I'm going to pick up with number 9 and kind of review a couple of the triangle patterns that we've talked about for congruent triangles. And then we're going to bump it up a notch and we're going to use some definitions and to build more proofs. All right, so the first two lines we have here's our given information. Now, it is absolutely vital that you mark your diagrams. If you do not mark your picture, then you cannot tell what pattern you're supposed to use here. So it's super important. I need to mark angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And I need to mark the fact that AB is congruent to CD. So that's really important. I want to put that on my picture. Now, there's something else in my picture that I can use, and I'm noticing that these two triangles share this side. I'm going to color code this for you. So, because they share this side, there should be an extra box out here. And this box is going to be the reflexive property. So because both of these triangles have BD, now it's also important to list them in corresponding order. So if you look at the top triangle, angle B is angle 1, but in the second triangle, 1 corresponds to 2. So when I talk about this segment, for the top triangle, I can refer to it as BD. But when I talk about the bottom triangle, I need to refer to it as DB. So little details there. So now that I have everything marked, I'm noticing, all right, this is a side, then I have my angle, and then I have another side. So the pattern for this one is side, angle, side. And that is enough to prove that the triangles are congruent. So that, of course, is our conclusion here. All right, great. So now let's look at some vertical angles. And I know we did 10 and 11 in class yesterday, so I'm going to pick up with number 12. So again, I'm going to start with my given information. And it's incredibly important that I mark what I'm given. All right, so I know QR and TR. And then I know angle Q and angle T. And so again, you're constantly looking for what pattern is it? What do I need to make this pattern happen? You have to have 3 things, right? Because all of our patterns have 3 letters, except for hypotenuse leg, which is the special case. So I notice, hey, look, I've got congruent vertical angles in here. So I'm running out of space, aren't I? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to label my angles. Remember, you have to have 3 letters to properly name an angle. So I've got PRQ is congruent to SRT, and remember to put those in corresponding order. So if I started with P corresponds to S, so I need to make sure those are in corresponding order, and I'm missing a box here. This should really be vertical angles theorem. Oops. And then I can see, all right, excellent. So I've marked an angle, a side, and then an angle. So this is angle, side, angle, which is enough to prove congruent triangles. All right, excellent. Don't be afraid to hit pause or stop at any time. If you need to take a breather, make sure you've got everything written down correctly. All right, so we're gonna pick up with some more definitions, and I wanna write my patterns at the top just to give you guys a reminder of what we're working with. So we're working with side, 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 angle, side, angle, side, angle, 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 side, and then hypotenuse leg is the special case. All right, let's see what we got. Now, if you notice, I've got two different given informations on here, two pieces of givens, and this does make a difference. In order for me to determine what pattern it is, I have to have 3 congruent pieces. Okay, so all of these have to be congruent in order for the pattern to happen. So if I look at the top one says bisect. So bisect doesn't give me congruent right away, but this segment does. So I need to put this on that first line. And I'm going to mark that right away in green. So I've got XY and then XZ. All right, so then in purple, I'm going to put bisects YXZ. And this is where that marking worksheet really came into play, because now I'm bisecting this angle, YXZ. So YXZ is out here. So when I chop this angle in half, if I highlight it, it really helps me to see which parts are congruent. So when I cut that in half, those two angles are going to be congruent. So those are our congruent pieces. So I've got angle YXM is congruent to ZXM. Again, making sure these are in corresponding order. Y corresponds to Z. And what goes in the box? What's the key word? Definition of angle bisector. All right, excellent. And then you want to ask yourself, all right, I've got 2 pieces. What's the third one? What in my picture can I use? And hopefully you have recognized these 2 triangles have XM in common. So XM is congruent to, does X correspond to X? Yes, it does, because they're mirror images of each other. And we know that to be the reflexive property talked about on the previous page. All right, so now I've got a side, an angle, and then my other side. So the pattern for this guy is side, angle, side, and that's enough to prove congruent triangles. All right, so there's number 1. Again, don't be afraid to hit that pause button or rewind if you need to slow down and really pick everything out. All right, now this one, number 2, has 3 sets of given information. So again, I'm looking for all of these parts to be congruent before I can name the pattern. So I want to pick out these congruent angles, angle DAN, and then I've got DNA. So these are going at the top of my proof. And I want to mark these right away. So if I notice, I've got DAN. I'm going to mark that, and then CBN. Then I've also got DNA, and then CNB. So I'm going to mark those right away. So next, the only thing I haven't used yet is midpoint. So I'm going to put N midpoint of AB. All right, excellent. So again, I want to think about, okay, if N is the midpoint, if I highlighted this part, what am I chopping in half? What congruent parts do I have? And if N is in the middle, then we know that these 2 highlighted portions are going to be congruent. So AN is congruent to, corresponding order, BN. All right, excellent. And again, keyword. 90% of the time, if you can follow the key word, that tells you what definition to use. All right, definition of midpoint. Okay, let's see what we got. I've got an angle, a side, and then an angle. So we're going to use angle, side, angle for our pattern. And that gives us congruent triangles. All right, nice work. We got 1 to go. All right, let's look at this one. Please make sure you have congruent pieces in order for this to work out. So I want to use my congruent angles right here at the top. And I'm going to mark those right away. So I've got CAN, which is congruent to IAN. And then bisect is my other important piece. So I'm going to highlight that. Where are we looking? CNI. All right, I just love highlighters. They really emphasize the important parts, and it's just so quick and easy to see. If I bisected this highlighted portion, then these two angles are going to have to be congruent. All right, so let's name those in order. CNA, oops, CNA. And then corresponding order, make sure C corresponds to I, so then I need I and A. And again, what's the key word? Definition of angle bisector. Sweet, but we're missing a third part. So what do the triangles have in common? Where do the triangles touch? And hopefully you're saying AN. They share AN. Make sure these are in corresponding order. Green goes with green. We know that to be the reflexive property. And now let's see what we got. So I marked an angle, and then I marked a side, and then I marked another angle. All right, it's looking like angle, side, angle, people. And that proves our congruent triangles. All right, that's a wrap, folks. We're going to do the next 3 definition proofs on Monday. So stay tuned. Have a good weekend.